Hey everybody, welcome to the SaaS Founder Show. Back for another episode. This show is where we have fascinating conversations with successful SaaS founders who share everything about their journey, their learnings, their insights along the way. And as usual, I'm joined by Insidious founder, Mr. Andy Halco. How you doing, Andy?
I'm fantastic. It's a lovely day. Weather's coming out nicely. Can't complain about that. How about you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I took my dog for a pre-show walk. That's usually part of my routine here. And spring is in bloom and exciting. So
very cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about our show today and who we've got and what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so we're talking to Erica Hawkinson. She's the co-founder and CMO of Orchestry. And that is a platform, and we'll have her tell us a lot more, but it's work made simple in Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. So with that, I will bring Erica on.
Hello.
Hey, Erica, welcome.
Hi, nice to see you guys. Nice to meet you, Andy and Tony. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get started, I want to hear the story about the guitars that are behind you. Banjo, ukulele, that's awesome.
Yeah. So this is my kind of sanity zone here. This is if I get a couple breaks between calls and, get a little too worked up about something, if I can pick up one of these, it calms me right down, puts me in a different headspace. So I keep them close. My daughter's just starting to learn the ukulele, which is awesome. I'm happy to start sharing that with her. And then, the banjo really is my most recent endeavor, and it's a heck of a lot harder than playing the guitar.
So I have to tell you, so I play guitar. I played in bands in college and stuff, and I'm not very good.
Cool.
But we were in my wife, daughter, and I were in Dollywood a couple weeks ago on spring break.
Oh, wow.
Bluegrass band, and the guy playing the banjo blew me away. It was pretty awesome. So
right.
Yeah,
I know.
We may need some outro music today.
There we go.
Maybe we can put something together for these SaaS founders, some kind of theme song or something. It definitely needs a banjo. Yeah, banjo and cowbell, I think. I can hear both already.
I love it.
So cool. Tell us about Orchestry. We'd love to hear and learn all about it, but just give us the overview.
Yeah, so you gave a nice background of really the simplicity of it is that we developed Orchestry to help organizations of various sizes in many industries to help simplify the Microsoft 365 suite for them. So, back when we started using the Office suite, we were talking about Word and PowerPoint and Excel, and maybe if you're really advanced, you used Access. Now we're talking about dozens of applications that every user can get their hands on, should they be allowed per organization basis. And it's created a lot of confusion, a lot of questions, like what do I use when? When I want to set up a collaborative environment where we can talk about a project, do I do that in SharePoint? Do I do that in Teams? If I want to create something that requires deadlines for that project, do I do that in Planner? Do I do that in To-Do? Do I do that in Microsoft Lists? Do I do that in Outlook Lists? There's apologies. There's just so many different applications. So Orchestry really started with a research project of us trying to understand how big organizations were going to make the jump into Teams, and then what the hurdles were that they were going to encounter along the way based on people that have already started or the hesitancies of really going into adoption. And those common themes came up: what to use when, governance. We really, really relied on strong provisioning in SharePoint. Why does this look so different in Teams, and what do I do about it? Do I just lock it down, or do I open it up and give it a free-for-all? And finally, when you think about people, building things really up to a custom basis in SharePoint and then going into Teams and it's very vanilla, then they're thinking, okay, how much time is this going to take me, or how much is this going to cost me to get this to work for me like everything else I've customized in my environment? And so Orchestry takes all those themes and delivers answers to really simplify the experience, and then deliver enablement, adoption, governance, transparent governance, so that that control is visible to your end users and they can also participate in building those workspaces with you. So it's not all on IT. Just is the reason Teams was born, is to kind of get people more in the collaborative environment and participating. And so we're able to do that with Orchestry.
That's cool. So I used to work at an organization a couple of years back that was a Microsoft organization, but it's funny because it felt like people didn't realize the different tools that were available through like 365. And so people ended up, use Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but then for other things, people are always looking for other like third-party solutions when there's so much there. So I certainly get, maximizing understanding, all that seems very much like a need. But you said this was born out of a research project? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. So two of my co-founders and I, we used to be a part of Bonsai Internet, which is a SharePoint Internet in a box vendor, and was sold off in 2018. And we were working all together there. And when Teams was released in 2017, and we kind of just left it to the corner. It wasn't SharePoint. It was limited feature set. We didn't know how it was going to be adopted. I mean, I worked at Microsoft. I'm going to date myself. I worked at Microsoft when they released the Zune. I don't know if you guys ever even heard about the Zune, but it was Microsoft's answer to the iPad, right? And there was so much fanfare, and every employee got a Zune, and it was going to be the next big thing. And, ask anyone if they've heard of the Zune today, and you have to be a certain age demographic to even know it existed. It was also brown, which I'm not sure on the color choice there, but so we looked at Teams with a healthy amount of skepticism, and we didn't really think much about it. But by the time we sold in 2018, there were so many extra added features that we knew Microsoft was going to push hard, and they kept putting so many things through Teams. So a lot of people, if you have used Teams in your work environment, often say, well, do I use Teams or SharePoint? And what's a huge fallacy is that actually SharePoint sits on the back of Teams. Every time you have a team, you have a SharePoint site. And so it isn't either or. It's actually how do you work better with both, because they both give you really different tools and different ways to collaborate. And so we had to start paying attention, but having not really went to market with Teams before, that's where that research project came from. And luckily, having the previous company, we had a lot of friendly Fortune 500 companies and companies in different industries that we could reach out to and say, what are you going to do about this? What's your approach? Have you already started rolling it out since last we spoke? What does that look like? What challenges are you facing? And like I said, that common theme kept coming up of like, we don't know what to use. We spend so much time trying to get our employees to the right tool, they're not really being productive in the suite that we bought. And so, how do we do that better? And how are we going to afford doing what we did in SharePoint and Teams? What does that look like? How heavily do we customize? Do we do it for every team? And how do you do that from a provisioning perspective? And then it was really like our IT administrators going like, oh God, this is going to be such a mess. Let's lock it down. And then you had startups that were going like, oh yeah, everybody can control their own work environments. This is fantastic. But then when you started talking to people and then you started looking at their teams and it was like, don't invite John to this team, you knew, oh man, these guys need to get some governance in place. You got to figure out how to get this sorted quickly, because you all of a sudden have 3,000 teams and most of them are being used.
Wow. So how did it go from, this research project and finding out this information to, becoming a real product? What's kind of that origin story there?
Yeah. So luckily, I have been in this entrepreneurship venture before solely, and this time I've been able to do it with partners, which is such a different ride and really been a learning experience for me. But luckily, I was partnered with the right team, and Michael Paseric, our CEO, he's a multi-year Microsoft MVP and really has a mind for product. So once those themes started coming out, he started formulating, okay, here are the core capabilities that need to be a part of this product that we're going to release. codenamed Teamzo. Thank God we, found a better name to Orchestry, but we worked through that, and he kept coming up with different ideas. Is this going to work? What should be really our MVP versus what we want to expand into? We bounced those ideas off again, the organizations we had already interviewed, saying, would this work for you if we did something like this? We put together some, really early stage user graphics to kind of show what it would look like within the Teams platform, and spoke with enough people in the industry, just having the background of already had been in a SharePoint internet and a box vendor, that we were able to get enough confidence to say, yeah, this is really going somewhere. There was no one that we talked to in this time that we were formulating what Orchestry was going to look like that said it was a bad idea. Everyone was saying, I'll be your first customer, or can we sell this? And so we got enough yeses and enough positive reviews of the idea that we were going with, that we just started going, all right, we got to find the fourth piece of the puzzle, which wasn't someone we worked with at Bonsai. We had to find the architect that could architect this thing for us and make it scalable. And luckily, after many months of not finding the right fit, we were able to find our very incredibly talented CTO, Sarah Wilson, who also herself had previously built an internet in a box product for SharePoint. She's just phenomenal. I mean, she can code faster than 10 developers and just make it built to last and built right the first time. She's just been a wonderful addition to complete our founding family.
I'm kind of curious, I want to hear more about, that story of how the product was built. But, one of the things I hear a lot from early founders is finding that CTO. How did you said you found someone great, what did it take to find someone that was the right fit for the team and could do the job?
Yeah, so we were looking for a while. I mean, it was the biggest hole to fill, because Michael, Denise, who's our CEO, Denise Ching, and myself, we had worked together previously, and we had, in that previous environment, owned different roles that really fit and melded well together. That CTO was really someone that we hadn't figured out, and we talked to a lot of other Microsoft partners to see if there was a fit for us to do this together, which would have been so much more complex. We looked back at previous developers that we worked with, and again, it had to be someone that had enough of experience building something that could scale. It couldn't just be someone that knew how to code. It had to be someone that really knew infrastructure and architecture really well, so they could think 5 years down the road, what's the potential problem we would run into coding it this way? And Sarah actually worked for a previous Bonsai internet partner. So we had met her years ago during the training of her, being able to implement Bonsai internet. And she impressed the hell out of both Denise and Michael, and just kind of stuck in their minds. And after having a few conversations with her, and me being on a trip, business trip to Toronto, and me being able to meet with her in person and talk things out, and her, she just has just an incredible mind for infrastructure and product, but also comes up with really great marketing ideas. So she's great to collaborate with.
Yeah, that's a challenging piece for a lot of founders is, if they've found the idea or looking to solve the problem, finding that technical resource to really help, it come to life.
Yeah, so she's invaluable.
In that process, was it, did you raise funds and hire a team, or did you bring everybody on as partners and kind of, sweat equity through that initial creation of the product?
Yeah, we of course, as founders, talked about this a couple of different ways, and having had a hand in, being an entrepreneur and having had a hand in Bonsai, we all really recognize the value in being able to control the vision, and us having a strong idea of how we wanted to go to market and what we wanted to bring to the market. We weren't willing to give up equity or, willing to kind of play with other parties, because it becomes so much more complex the more people you involve. So we did decide to self-fund, and we decided to do sweat equity, and it's been a journey, but yeah, we were able to become revenue positive in the first 6 months, which, if you've ever if you've ever tried to hand out it yourself, it's pretty impossible. But luckily, I think just with the connections that we had and the way we were able to bring on Orchestry partners to help resell with us, which we're at 30 Orchestry partners officially now, we've been able to scale, better than expected. And of course, the adoption of Microsoft Teams from, the rush to remote work has escalated at a rate that we couldn't even have expected.
So what did that look like last year as the pandemic hit and everyone needed to be, managing remote teams, communicating, all of that? How did that impact you guys?
Yeah, so we really started writing our first lines of code January 2020. We had, spent a lot of 2019 doing the research project, formulating what the product would look like, then finding a CTO that could really get behind what we were doing and look at it from a technical perspective and tell us what we had thought would work may not, or here's how we should be configuring or thinking about the architecture in a different way. So we really got to work January 2020. And of course, at that time, no one saw that everyone was going to be at remote working by December 2020. The number for Microsoft Teams daily active users at that point was 35 million daily active users, which we thought was very healthy and that we were going into a really interesting market, and that that number just kept ticking up at a slower pace. By March, just seeing that, wow, a lot of major organizations were flipping to working remotely, and they were going to have to solve that technology challenge first. We figured we'd see a little bit more of a spike, and we launched August 3rd of 2020. And the official number from Microsoft, the last one that I think they've really released publicly, was 115 million daily active users on Microsoft Teams by October. So it was definitely a rush to get it out once we realized how many people were flooding into Teams, and we had to make some decisions of what was going to go in MVP and what wasn't, and what we were going to come to market with later. On the same on the product launch side, we were scrambling to get everything ready so that we could get out there while people were still making that transition into working from home. It took a little longer, of course, than anyone ever expects, but yeah, we've been extremely lucky just in a timing perspective to be going into the market that we went into. So
if I heard those numbers correctly, they essentially tripled, right?
They did.
Wow.
Yeah, in 10 months, yeah.
Pretty incredible.
And I'm always interested, you talked about your MVP. I'm always interested in how founders and companies decide what features go into their MVP and what waits. How did you guys go through that process and thinking about your roadmap to develop the product?
Yeah, so we, again, went back to the organizations we'd worked with before and the other Microsoft network that we had cultivated, and begged and pleaded for them to test our product and give us feedback before we were really solid on what was all going to be included in the MVP. And so that was extremely helpful. I mean, we had very knowledgeable Microsoft experts that were telling us, what was working well and what wasn't. Of course, on the back burner, we had a few other core capabilities that we wanted to fit in to the MVP, but we had to also think about it from a development perspective and a timing perspective. We wish we would have launched a couple months earlier. It took us a little longer, both on the development and this go-to-market side. And then also we had to recognize what organizations needed first. And so while we had a few others on the back burner, like really sexy things like IA and something that could really give you advice and recommendations on how to curb usage and drive adoption and those types of things, that was going to take us a heck of a lot longer to get there. So we decided, okay, we really need to solve back to those core themes. We really need to solve the question of what to use when. We need to solve the governance issue, and we need to solve the timely costs and customization issues. So what we launched with, it's not too different than what we have today, definitely on a different scale, was Workspace Templates. We pre-built Workspace Templates, and what that solved was the timely customization, or the time and costly customizations piece, because you actually could carbon copy an exact team, say a project management template that we've built, and port that over to your team's environment and replicate all the way through to like exactly what's the planner is there.
Mm-hmm.
Then we included, of course, transparent governance, because that really needed to happen both from an administrative perspective down to an end user perspective. And then workplace provisioning had to get so much easier than making a request to the IT department to get back to you. So we put in workplace provisioning that was really a step-by-step wizard that then had automated workflows that would go to the administrators and to any of the owners that would have to approve these types of workspaces being built. We put in naming conventions to then, create the findability of different teams, workspaces, and groups. And then finally, we gave them a directory. So one of the big complaints is how many teams are in their environment that have the exact same name. Somebody creates a global marketing team, but it was private. So then somebody else creates a global marketing team that's public. And somebody else calls it an international marketing team. And all of a sudden, you have 8 teams with the same name. So that directory really gives them before you go into making a team, let's make sure it doesn't exist already and you just don't know about it or haven't seen it for some reason.
Wow, that's really cool. I think in that first 6 months that you guys were getting launched, what did you see as the biggest challenge that you faced in bringing the product to market?
Quite so many. So many.
Well, I'll maybe limit it to 50 if you can.
Okay, well, 50, top 50. So being a Microsoft partner, it's interesting because you're really building upon a platform that already exists, and you have to add extra value to what Microsoft is already delivering, and they're delivering a whole hell of a lot. And so you're going into a market that has already bought a product and you're saying, but wait, you need one more because this product doesn't do this, right? So if we think about those things, that go to market, what's your USP? How are you different? Why should people be paying attention? It becomes incredibly important because you can sound just like Microsoft, and then people can say, oh, there's already something on the market for this. We don't need you. And so that component was really complex to get right. We really wanted to be able to get to market with a message that resonated and a tool that was actually useful and sticky. So we had to put things in the tool that were repeatable. Lots of people can get you launched in Microsoft Teams, but how do you make it useful over the duration of someone using it? So one example would be, you really need this product to be able to implement Teams successfully. And then once it's implemented, do you still need it anymore? Well, one of the next things we're doing in Orchestry, the release that we have coming in next month, is lifecycle management throughout Workspaces. So it's not just the creation, it's the management, it's the sunsetting, it's the archiving, it's the full duration or arc of how you use a work environment. And some work environments are very quick. You have a 30-day project. You no longer need it. It shouldn't be taking up space, and people shouldn't continue to be collaborating there. And so you need to think of that arc and how that's going to be preserved for compliance and regulatory issues, et cetera. So I think it was twofold for us. Like, what were the hardest parts? We were trying to figure out what should go in the product first. And then, now that we're in market, we can see, hey, what we thought was really important, actually, there's this other thing that became way more important that people need more. And so how do we then pivot our roadmap to address that issue before, kind of getting into what we thought, the direction we thought we were going. But having built that partner community so quickly, where we have 30 organizations that, vote on features and give us feedback and collaborate with us at all times. They often have Microsoft MVPs on their own team that are really deep in product knowledge that can share with us some ideas. That has helped us continue to kind of propel us in the right direction of where we want to go next from a road mapping perspective. And that's meant making some hard choices about things that we thought we'd be delivering that now we're delaying. And then really communicating from zero, nobody knows about us, an obscure named product called Orchestry. What does that mean? interesting name. How does it relate to what I have? To getting the market presence and getting the contact list and getting the brand awareness so that we can actually show up in the right places when people are experiencing these challenges.
I'd like to ask a little bit about that. Since you're the CMO, kind of what does that look like from a marketing standpoint, starting with a new brand, taking it to market? What are some of the learning lessons you've had along the way, some of the tactics and channels you guys have used?
Yeah, so that's my forte. That's why they keep me around. We actually, so one of the, my background is strongly in SEO and search engine optimization. So one of my biggest hurdles is starting a new domain. Like, it's got absolutely no authority. It's got nothing linking to it. And you want to take that from 0 to 60 upon launch. Like, oh my gosh, that's a very big ask. So again, we have a CEO who's known in the Microsoft space, Michael Psarek, and we were able to set up michaelpsarek.com while we were building up Orchestry. And what we would do on michaelpsarek.com, this seems like such an odd thing to talk about now, but it's important. I will get to the point. We were blogging over there about all of the different educational materials that we would be blogging about Orchestry, and some of the challenges too that we were seeing in teams and how to overcome them from within the platform. More of a long, manual process. But here's how you work around these challenges. Once Orchestry launched, we took all of that traffic that we built up for Michael Psarek over the year, and we redirected it to Orchestry. So we instantly had traffic on all of those blogs that we had migrated from michaelpsarek.com, who, we had built up a pretty good web traffic over the months, and we're able to get traffic to Orchestry immediately. We also had quite friendly organizations and partners that we had been talking to through the process of building Orchestry. And so we had, somewhat of a mailing list to start with, which is great. So we planned a ton of events. We've done, 50 virtual events since launch, whether that's contributing on a conference perspective so more people can know about us, or us specifically hosting with other MVPs and Microsoft partners. We were, for a cadence of about 3 months last year, running one every single week with a different partner on a different topic to solve a different challenge that people were facing, whether it was really complex and specific, like sensitivity labels in Microsoft 365, or more end user focused, like what's best practice etiquettes for communicating in teams and channels and in a meeting. And so we've covered the gamut of a lot of topics and built a really healthy marketing list that we're able to market to not even a year later. That's more than 1,500 contacts that we've been able to build over that time. So that's a couple of things that have brought us quite a bit of success and that we're building upon.
That's great. Just to go back to the Michael's blog that you guys had set up, what type of content was being published there?
So content that we would talk about on Orchestry, it was specifically picked. It was content around SharePoint. So as SharePoint would come out with new features that people didn't know much about or how to use, or when to use it, we would blog about SharePoint anchor links. Like, how do you use them? How do you apply them to a page? Why are they important? Really, dry stuff in some places. Yeah. And then a lot around Microsoft Teams. So channel moderation. What's your responsibility as a channel moderator? What does that look like? Or more high level things. You're just getting started in Microsoft Teams. What are the 10 tips that we could give you to kind of get off and running to a success as an end user? From an IT administrator, we created guides that would help you look at Microsoft Teams and kind of apply your knowledge from SharePoint into how to use Microsoft Teams. Lots around governance and how to govern teams. It was much around most of the applications in the Microsoft 365 space, but heavily around SharePoint and Teams, which Orchestry addresses.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're providing a ton of value, answering questions, showing people how to do the things that ultimately Orchestry would certainly help with. But yeah, that's great. And for you, that's probably obvious, but we've seen so much success in that space as well from an SEO standpoint, that if you can really create content that helps people out. You're establishing that authority and that trust, and people are going to keep coming back and looking to you as a resource. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and we've had really great success getting Michael out to speaking opportunities like Comsverse or Teams Day Online, or places where people are going to fill that knowledge gap. And he's an outstanding speaker, but also just has that depth of knowledge that really gives people kind of practical advice to come out of the surveys from those things are always just like, this is the most practically, designed presentation I've ever seen. Like, I can actually go and do something within my environment. Thank you so much. So we love delivering stuff like that and hearing that anything that we've participated in, people can actually tangibly take something away and go, I'm going to go try this right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We are massive believers in, being able to articulate what makes you unique and building a strong brand around that. You kind of mentioned USP and different ways that you could approach the market. So how did you really approach that challenge of how do you articulate who you are and what makes you unique and why people should buy?
Yeah, I turmoiled over the USP for at least 3 months. That was many, many different iterations and many different conversations and iterations of the ones that I thought I was going to go with initially. What ultimately helped us make a decision of work made simple in Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, and across Microsoft 365 was a lot of other competitors we were seeing come on the market, which interestingly were similar to the competitors that we were going against when we did have Bonsai. It was, Powell Software pivoting into Teams with Powell Teams. It was Valo Internet pivoting into Teams with Valo Teamworks. It was AvePoint, like a highly regarded consulting service and product company, pivoting in to give a Microsoft Teams solution heavily based on governance. When we were looking at them, most of them are focused solely on Teams collaboration, and really not on the other part of the Microsoft 365 suite that Teams is really heavily, and it's just intertwined throughout Microsoft 365. It touches everything. You can send a message from Teams into Outlook or a message from your SMS into Teams. Like, it's just, it's connected everywhere, right? So quickly I was able to identify we're very unique in that it's not just in Teams, and very few of our competitors were even touching SharePoint, which is, a backbone of sites and Teams. And coming from a SharePoint space, we knew how to touch SharePoint and be able to integrate it into templates and various other things. So being able to do a lot of competitive research, which when we started this project, there was nobody in the space that we could quickly identify. I mean, there were people that were doing kind of a product that was somewhat on top of something else that they did, but there was nothing fully baked, really. But as we got closer to launch, and as our launch pushed a little bit, we did see a few other gargantuan companies compared to us. Three other gorillas come to market and take a look at them and go, oh, interesting. Like, they really took it as a Teams only problem. And we didn't look at it as a Teams only problem. We looked at it really Microsoft 365. I would say AvePoint would be the outlier to that, because they really looked at it as a governance problem in Microsoft 365, which they do really well, but they do so well, it can be overkill for some organizations. You have to be a certain size and need that level to really afford AvePoint and to be able to implement it effectively. So that's really what brought us back to the USP is that, our competitors really weren't touching all of the same areas of Microsoft 365. And what was most important for our clients was getting their end users to the tool they need when they need it, and knowing confidently which tool that they needed to get to use, whether it was Teams, whether it was SharePoint, whether it was Planner. And the other side was, the governance arc of things. How are they going to make sure that the wild, wild west could become a little more reformed? And also, how could they let go of the reins a little bit so that IT wasn't holding all the cards and slowing people down? And that's really where we focused. And that's kind of where the work made simple came from across an entire organization.
I'm kind of curious from the CMO perspective, how much do you evolve messaging and change and adapt? I think for a lot of founders, there's that, a lot of them aren't, marketing savvy. And so, they may come up with, here's how I'm going to talk about my company, and I do it for the next year. How often are you thinking about that, the change and how you have to talk about the business and the product?
Yeah, a lot. Probably much like you. We look at it with every release. So we do minor and major releases. We've actually done quite a few since launch. And so with every release comes a new opportunity to pivot and expand the way that we're marketing ourselves. It also, obviously, we're adding different feature sets that people care about. And so with every release that our USP doesn't definitively change, but it does bend and flex to include the various things that we've added. We just did a really large compliance release where we really went into a space where the compliance we're now delivering is unparalleled with the other products that we've looked at in the market. And it's giving really important access to things like sensitivity labels, which organizations, especially heavily regulated organizations, really need that surfaced up to the top and have that control for sharing options, et cetera. And so that has helped us become, a little bit more of a nuanced product, that we offer these types of compliance things that obviously bigger, more heavily regulated organizations are looking for, which makes us less of a scrappy little startup and more of a, whoa, these guys are in the market to play with larger organizations, as we have in the past, and actually know the business purpose behind these things and why they're important, and from a regulatory perspective, why we need to keep track of them. So technically, and on the business side, we're always balancing the messaging from just catering to IT, but showing that we understand why you need this as a business, and here's why we've included this in the product, and here's how you use it effectively.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, and I'd love to pick your brain more on the marketing side. You talked about you had a background in SEO. Were there other tactics that you looked at, like advertising? How much did you leverage social, and all the other different opportunities? Because I think, again, a lot of product founders struggle in, where should I start with marketing when I'm starting at zero, really?
Mm-hmm. So social, we're heavily leveraged in social. We haven't paid to play yet. And that's more because we are a self-funded startup, and we need, a few more big wins to be able to have that reliable budget from a paid perspective. And having run so many paid campaigns, it's not like a stop-start initiative. You really need a good 3 months to kind of learn, all right, these were my ideas in the beginning that I thought were going to work really well, and here's what I've learned. And so we need to pivot that, we need to refine it, we need to tweak it, we need to keep going. Okay. And by the time you're at that 3 month period, you've kind of nailed where you want that CTR to be and that conversion to be. And you can kind of get that flowing on a more ongoing basis. So I'm happy, looking forward to that budget. We're working on getting a nest egg so that we can get that running. But again, I don't want to kind of start so that we're not actually learning with every campaign that we're launching. But social has been a really big part of our campaign, both because as we built our partner community, we got more people involved with talking about Orchestry, but also our CEO, Michael, is very active both on Twitter and LinkedIn. And that's where we play from a B2B space. So that's where we've been building up our brand as we do live events with other Microsoft MVPs that have dedicated followers because they're very knowledgeable about their subject matters. We've been able to, promote and gain some audience following through the people that we've been collaborating with. So that's been very organic. I wouldn't say that we've grown exponentially and it's so amazing what we've done on social, but from a B2B perspective, we've healthily grown. We've healthily got recognized. One of our early successes has been we have partnered with Microsoft, and Microsoft has actually been really interested in Orchestry, both where we are on the Canadian side of the border and in the US. So we were able to be the first Microsoft partner listed in this Teams Adoptions Partner Solution Gallery, both internally for Microsoft Global Field Sales Team. So they saw Orchestry as a way for customer success and customer adoption and engagement usage of Microsoft Teams in the long term. And then upon release of that, from a customer-facing perspective, we were also the first partner listed in the customer solution the partner solution adoption gallery for Microsoft Teams. And I actually can credit that back for when I worked at Microsoft so many years ago. We ended up, stay connected, don't burn bridges, keep going, people, because we actually ended up having our partner manager at Microsoft, a guy I used to work with when we worked there, and that was his project. So he said, well, I'm going to work with Orchestry on this. Erica, give me all the things that you need. And that was amazing to be able to kind of have that relationship so many years later that it benefited us from an Orchestry side. Nick Sitter, that's a shout out. And then on the Canadian side, we've been really well supported from our Canadian partner manager, that we've been able to be featured in Startup Canada podcast. And we also were in the Financial Post alongside Microsoft for a third-party tool that helped organizations during the pandemic build resiliency, drive productivity, and deliver an enhanced customer experience during a difficult time.
That's really cool. One other piece on the initial marketing, we talk about like hacking all the time in for new products. Are there unique maybe channels that other people aren't thinking of and aren't typically used for marketing that you can leverage? We've talked with HR products about leveraging job boards in a unique way to get the word out and things like that. Did you, is that anything that you've thought of in your kind of marketing repertoire, is, maybe turning something in on its head and leveraging?
Yeah, we've heavily leveraged all of the different features LinkedIn has come out with over the past year. Again, we're Microsoft partners, so we're probably paying attention to Microsoft technologies more than most. So we've had great success with InMail campaigns. I know as a person that constantly gets asked by InMail to do things and be a part of things and just go to one more demo, how annoying those could be. Absolutely. And that's not really the way that we approach it. We're very targeted. So especially with our Orchestry partners, we want Orchestry partners that have experience in a certain sector, that have the right people to be able to deliver Orchestry, so the right background and being able to implement those types of things and create a service solution package around it. So we're selective, but they have been very receptive when they hear from us through an InMail about this new product that could help them, generate further revenue through their Teams and Microsoft 365 practice. So that's been really fruitful for us. And then leveraging things like they released a new product page that you can now have alongside your company page. And that product page, actually, if you're a technology product, your contacts can say that they're proficient in this product. And then you're starting to show up on all of these different profiles as a product that people can get certified for or proficient at, or those types of things. So that's been another interesting, more recent evolution that's kind of spread around awareness.
That's a great tactic.
Yeah.
And podcasts like this one.
There you go. Shifting gears just a little bit, Erica, I believe you mentioned that you've been down the founder path before, but on your own. And in this venture, you have co-founders. So I think you said that you've had some great things that you've learned and figured out this time down the path. I would love to hear about that and kind of how the founders all work together and their place in the organization.
Yeah, so it's been a different experience. I mean, if you've ever been a sole entrepreneur yourself, you're used to making all the decisions, not checking with anyone, and at the end of the day, not wanting anyone to ask you to make a decision about what to have for dinner or any of those things. You're kind of just, I'm here when it's just me. What's been really nice to have co-founders is really spreading the amount of labor that's required to successfully operate a company. Like Denise, our CEO, she is got legal nailed to a science. It is pretty impressive. Like, she can turn things around really fast. She's great at negotiation. She's fantastic at managing finance and getting the resources there that we need. You know, I can't even fathom what I would try to do in Sarah, our CTO's role. I'd probably be staring at a blank screen often. And she just has just an incredible mind for problem solving, especially as, you know, bugs will come in and problems will come up, and she doesn't get stressed and she works around it and she's able to problem solve. One of the big things that we did recently, as we've onboarded more customers and partners, is that we had to look at the scalability, performance, and data sovereignty of the different regions that we're serving. So we have customers and partners in New Zealand and Australia, in Sweden and South Africa, of course, across North America. And running that from North America wasn't practical and didn't solve some of, again, like the data sovereignty issues from a multinational corporation, or even if we were partnering with an Australian company, why would they want their data in the US? So we've gone back, re-engineered our Orchestry product so that it does, you know, data lives locally, the performance is run on a local basis, and then, you know, backed up so that we have failover and all of these things that, you know, going into a product when you're just hoping that the market loves what you've put together, you can't afford to build. And so we've gone back and done that. And that's, again, all to the credit of Sarah. You can ask me to do any of that. And so what's been really nice having co-founders is that we are all specialties in the area that we play, except for Michael, because he's the CEO and he has to burn, you know, he has to take the fires and put them out all the time, just as any CEO does. But it's been really nice for people to be able to collaborate when we need to collaborate, but also know that even if you're not responsible for that part of the business, it's going to be done just as well or better than you could even think about doing it. Like, we're all pretty over the top with expectations of ourselves, which could be bad or good. But in a founder situation, you couldn't ask for better founders. That there's nobody that ever thinks anyone else is slacking off. If anything, we're constantly saying, like, hey, get offline, you know, maybe take the weekend off. You know, maybe don't get up at 5 a.m. and start your meetings. Maybe just sleep in one day. And so it's been really nice to just have other people that are, you know, very reliable and extremely talented. And I respect any opinion or feedback that they can give to me, because it all comes from a place of where we all want to collectively succeed.
We kind of, it sounds like similar to others that we've talked to, when when there are co-founders, that dynamic of having people in different areas of expertise, and sometimes a little bit of overlap, but really being able to rely on one another and not too many cooks in the kitchen, but more of a team approach where Erica's focusing on what she's amazing at and so on and so forth. So it sounds like you guys got that down, which is fantastic.
We do. I mean, Michael has to wear all the hats, so I don't envy him, but he's very good at participating in every part of the business as well.
Yeah, that's great.
How have you guys looked at culture, building the culture and thinking about as you grow the team, you know, how you want to define the types of people you bring on and what type of organization it is? Have you been very purposeful about it or organic? What's your thought with culture?
So it's been organic in a sense that, you know, the founding team has been working together since the beginning, and it really was initially just the four of us. And so that organically happened, and those relationships organically happened. What I think is really unique about us, specifically in the tech space, is that we're 75% female founded in a highly dominant male domain, especially, you know, I've worked with Microsoft partners and with Microsoft for the past 15 years. There aren't many calls I take where I'm talking to a female founder, and I'm delighted when I do. And there's so many different people that we work with that have incredible staff and that do have some females there. Other times there isn't, and so I think that makes us quite unique. And it also brings a different flavor from a culture perspective, because we as women, tend to bring a little bit something to the table that is somewhat different than what males do. And Michael has definitely loved the environment, and at the same time, I'm sure doesn't always want to be the only man in the room. What's really funny to me, because I'm doing this award nomination for a startup award for Orchestry right now, is they asked us for a team photo of the founding team, and I recognized, oh right, we've never all been in the same room together because of the pandemic. So we actually don't have a founding photo. Isn't that interesting? From a company perspective, that we've been on plenty of Teams calls together, but we don't have a photo of all four of us together. So that's been an interesting culture shift. Definitely at Bonsai, we were always in person and always in conference rooms and traveling for conferences together and going to customer sites and things. So that's been an interesting shift. And I think a lot of companies are seeing that right now. And it's sometimes hard to stay as well connected when you're not having that water chit chat, the coffee room banter type of thing. So we have different teams that do take care of some of the getting in the personal side of hearing about each other's day and being able to have those moments as well. And as we've brought on new team members, we've also integrated them into that. Unfortunately, right now, virtually, getting to know each other and having some of the personal side of everyone's environment and making sure that we know what's going on in each other's lives when things are stressful outside of work. Two of the so Denise and Michael are actually married. So Denise and Michael have moved, Sarah has moved, and I'm selling my house right now. So we've all been under some stress in the last 6 months, and we all have kids. So those types of things come up in conversations, and we talk about the stress of the things that are happening outside of what we're doing together. And I think that helps from a cultural perspective to just have that open and honest communication. And we love that we have that type of relationship with ourselves and as we grow the team.
Yeah, that's cool.
With a lot of help from, we've got a great team member, Rasha, that's really driven us to do a lot of interviews of female software founders. And so we've had a great series of folks. But, to your point that you just mentioned, what do you think the opportunity is for especially those female founders out there that are, thinking about starting a software company or just getting started? What are your kind of, I guess, thoughts or advice for those types of folks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have noticed that your podcast has quite a few SaaS female founders, and it's been really enjoyable to hear from them and see that you guys are invested in trying to have, equal showcase for people. So I appreciate that about your show. Thanks for making that a focus for us. I would say I have two friends right now that are raising funds, and it's been incredibly hard for them to get the same face time as other people that they see are in the same stage that they're at in trying to get in front of investors and trying to get in front of different angel capital companies. So I think, it's not that people don't talk about that there is a different dynamic for women in the tech space. And I think we're doing a really good job of calling that out and people paying attention and organizations trying to be more mindful of the fact that, for every 10 males you see, you maybe see one SaaS female founder that's making a pitch. And I think the more that we can support each other and do the things like you're asking right now, what are the things that you would share? The things I would share is it's really easy to get caught in fear and doubt. And there are not going to be 100% of people that think your idea is great. But if you believe in it and you believe in yourself and that you continue to put yourself forward, you're going to find that audience that is going to believe and that is going to want to invest with you. And so as many doors that can get slammed on. I mean, I just spoke with another female founder that ended up partnering with a venture capital bank in New York because she couldn't get in the door as a woman to some of the places that she needed for financing. And so that's the approach that she has taken. Now, I haven't had the experience of raising funds myself. Like I said, we were lucky enough to be self-funded. That helped that we had a previous business that sold. I also worked for a previous business that I was part of the buyout before that one. So we've been lucky to be a part of some situations that has given us the opportunity to stay independent, but I know that that's not the option for all women. And I'd say just keep on knocking, ladies. Like, there are going to be someone there for you that believes in you just as much as you believe in yourself. So don't stop.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great message. So Erica, what's in store for Orchestry for the rest of the year here? What do you guys have coming?
Well, we're very excited. I mean, we're going to have our 1 year anniversary in August, which is crazy. When you're an entrepreneur, it feels like it's been 5 years in 2 months. So it's only going to be 1 year in August. But most of 2021 is going to be dedicated to that next release. So we're going to do the lifecycle management in Workspaces release that's slowly going to roll out to our partners over the next month. We're going to start to do a release to existing customers following that, and then do a lot of educational events and a huge launch after that to the public market to really talk about how this is going to really create a further gap between Orchestry and its competitors by really solving that solution of workspace management and workspace creation through archiving and sunsetting from the first time you're provisioning, which we already have in the product now, to what are the best practices for archiving and being able to retain sensitive and important information, again, for regulatory audits, all of those different types of things. So it's a major release. It's the biggest release we've done yet. We're very excited about it, but we're still taking on some feedback from early testers on what else could we do to improve it. So we're nearly there, and then that's going to shift us from a market perspective, who we serve. It's going to shift us from a marketing and sales perspective, and then certainly from a product perspective. So that's our big goal for 2021, to get that rolled out successfully and just keep blaring the horn about what Orchestry can do to really help drive enablement and adoption and governance in Microsoft 365.
It's awesome. Super exciting.
Yeah.
So before your musical outro, I have a question that I ask everyone. If you were able to go back in time before you started the business and have coffee with yourself, what advice would you give to, pre-launch Erica?
So like July 2020? I would tell Erica that COVID's still going to be here in it's April, and it's still here. Just be patient. Try to get outside more as much as you can. No, I would tell Erica about the business. There are going to be things that go wrong, and they are going to seem very stressful at the time, phenomenally stressful. Things that you feel from an owner perspective and the part of the business that you really run are going to be important, over your head important, that you're going to completely take too sensitively. And then you're going to come out the other side and be just fine. And I think that I can continue to just know that certainly a product company has peaks and valleys, as every entrepreneurship venture does. It's really a lot nicer to ride those with co-founders than it is solely on your own. So I continue to tell myself to feel the love and be supported by the founder family we've created, because it's a more enjoyable ride when you're able to share in that.
That's awesome. Well, where can our viewers go to find out more about you, about Orchestry, and pay attention to what you guys are doing? Yeah,
Orchestry. So it's a weird word. Here's how you spell it. It's ORCHESTRY, orchestry.com. That's where you can find us. I mentioned before that we do like to do educational events. We do one pretty much bi-weekly with different Microsoft MVPs. The next one we have coming up, which will be really interesting, is with Matt Wade, who will be doing Rockstar team events. So how do you conduct and host a Rockstar team event? And Michael Paseric will be joining him, both MVPs, both outstanding speakers. Love it when we do events with Matt Wade. So tune into those. We also have guides on Microsoft Teams best practices, on governance in Microsoft 365. So you might find some really cool tools there and templates for your team's background. We have those things. You can also find us on LinkedIn. I mentioned we're just Orchestry is our name there. On Twitter, we're Orchestry Soft, SOFT. Those are the general channels. But you can also find me, Erica Hawkinson. I think my name is here. That's pretty much my handle everywhere. So I'm happy to talk with you about Orchestry, to talk with you about marketing. Love to connect.
Awesome. Well, Erica, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. And to our viewers, thank you guys. We will see you next time. Everyone take care.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.